Hey guys, Danimation here, and New Year's Eve is literally tomorrow. So, Happy New Year, I guess. Here's hoping that 2024 is going to be better than 2023. I'm kind of a glass half empty kind of guy, so I'm gonna say I don't think it will, but you know. Anyway, one thing that will be good about 2024 is what's going to go onto the channel. Because, well, as you can see from here, we've got Danimation Horror Fanverse Phase 5. Phase 4's done, by the way, because now Terminator's been released, and now the entire Plague of the Zombies storyline has been resolved. So the Plague trilogy would be like The Fly, Plague of the Zombies, and then Terminator, which would, basically change the future, so we can have more Danimation Horror Fanverse movies, like, take place in the future without contradicting the whole zombie apocalypse, because that isn't canon anymore. Well, still is, it's complicated, I'll explain it later. But anyway, Danimation Horror Fanverse Phase 5, possibly some things in Phase 6, but right now we're in Danimation Horror Fanverse Phase 5, and also Left Forgotten Season 2. That's all going to be coming out in 2024, so let's get into it. But before we get into this, I just want to say, yeah, I heard about the Bendy movie, and I'm really excited for it. Just don't ask for a video on it, considering that we don't have any news about it yet. We don't have any information about this movie yet, so don't ask for a video about it. I'm just going to put it in here just in case anyone asks about it, just so people that I know this movie's coming out. And I am really excited. Just one thing. Tony Todd is the Ink Demon. Just think about that. That needs to happen. Anyway, let's get into the Danimation Horror Fanverse stuff, because obviously, this is what you're here for. You don't want to hear about the Bendy movie. Well, maybe you do, I don't know. If you're a fan of the Danimation Horror Fanverse, you might be a fan of Bendy, then whatever, let's just get into the films, because that's what you're here for. So the first movie announcement for Phase 5 probably won't be the first movie in Phase 5, but you know I've been teasing this movie, Venom. Yeah, we're bringing in a Marvel character, but like the poll that I posted said, or voted, Venom is enough of a horror character to be included in the Danimation Horror Fanverse, and I completely agree with that, and I'm really excited to bring Venom into this universe because it's a different kind of movie, and I'm excited to do that. And all I'm going to talk about right now is the first Venom movie, but Venom will have a trilogy. But all we're going to talk about now is the first Danimation Horror Fanverse Venom. So let's get into that. And also, if you've seen the Danimation Horror Fanverse film Dracula's Asylum, you probably knew that Venom was coming. And you'll probably know who the villain's gonna be. Yeah, it's gonna be Carnage. I know, I wanted it to be Riot for the first movie, but then I just thought and looked at some things and I was like, no, Carnage for the first movie. I mean, that needs to happen. Like, we need Carnage if we're gonna have Venom. So, yeah. And if you watch Dracula's Asylum on the channel, you've already met Cletus Cassidy. So, yeah. And also, another thing in Dracula's Asylum, in case you haven't seen it, at the very end we get our first look at Venom. Well, not him bonded to anyone, but we get our first look at the symbiote, and Cletus Cassidy isn't a cameo in Dracula's Asylum, in case you haven't seen it. He's actually a major character in that film. So, after you've watched this video, if you haven't seen Dracula's Asylum, go and watch it. And honestly, if there's a lot of Danimation Horror Fanverse films you haven't seen, now's your chance. You might want to get caught up with them. You might want to get caught up with Left Forgotten and the rest of the Danimation Horror Fanverse movies. Or maybe even rewatch a couple if it's been a while. But yeah, before these movies start coming out, because obviously films like Terminator, which have already come out, other films are important. Just like with Venom, Dracula's Asylum is pretty important because it's pretty big to the story of Venom, and hell, Dracula's even going to be featured in the first Venom. He won't be in the other two Venoms, and there's a reason for that, but for that you're just going to have to wait and see the movie. But anyway, yeah, Venom and Carnage are going to be in the first Venom movie. It's going to have, a bit of a cold open where we get to see how the symbiote, or not how, but what happened when the symbiote first got to Earth. Then we'll have a time jump to 2018, and then we'll introduce Venom, bring in Carnage and everything, and yeah. It starts off at first right after Dracula's Asylum, which took place in 2008. That'll be with the cold open, there'll be a scene with Eddie Brock, and we'll see what happened when the symbiote first got to Earth. Then we'll jump in time to 2018, which is when the main story happens. Anyway, that's enough of that, so I hope you're excited for Venom. Let's get into the rest of them. Okay, let's get this all out the way first, just so you know all this is coming out, because there's going to be a lot of Godzilla stuff in Phase 5, and possibly even Phase 6. So, as you can see on the screen here, we've got Godzilla BC, Godzilla BC 2, Godzilla vs. King Kong, and a new Godzilla trilogy. So that's already 6 movies featuring Godzilla. So, let's get into them. So let's talk about Godzilla BC first. So, Godzilla BC has actually been a fan-made title for a while. I didn't come up with this title. But the thing is, as far as I've looked around, no one's made an effort. Well, that sounds kind of mean, but nobody has made their interpretation of what a Godzilla BC could be like. I want to do that. So I'm going to make my interpretation of Godzilla BC, which will take place in ancient Greece, and obviously feature Godzilla, and a couple of other monsters. Maybe Rodan and Mothra will show up. But I'm going to go over 2 monsters that are definitely confirmed for the first Godzilla BC, and even a monster who's going to be in Godzilla BC 2. So, let's get into it. First off, we're going to have the main villain of the movie. It's not going to be Ghidorah, and you might actually be shocked who the main villain of this movie is going to be, considering the time period, you know, ancient Greece and everything. Gigan. Yep, Gigan. The space cyborg chicken. Yep, him. Look, I know, he's a bit of a sci-fi-esque villain, and for Godzilla BC, you know, it's taking place in ancient Greece and everything. And, to be honest, I felt like BC was the only movie I could really put in Gigan, considering I looked at the whole, like, Salem thing with Godzilla, which I've been doing in the fanverse, which, if you don't know, by the way, mainly the Godzilla movies take place in Salem, and mainly about, like, the Salem witch trials and everything. If you want more context, go watch the... It's explained mostly in the first Danimation Godzilla movie, which is just called Godzilla, which, honestly, I think is actually one of my favourite Danimation movies. Some people may not like it, or think that other films are better. It's in my top 10. If you want to see it, then I might make a top 10 Danimation horror fanverse movies video, in my opinion. Yeah, just because I'm the guy that made them, that doesn't mean you have to agree with them. But anyway, let's keep going into this. So, why would Gigan show up in ancient Greece? So, I'm going to go over a bit of a plot summary, just so, A, I can explain Gigan's presence there, and also, just to get you hyped for the movie, and hopefully so you know what you're going into when the video comes out. So basically, how even in the opening scene, so ancient Greeks are going to be fighting monsters, not to survive, but for entertainment. Like with bullfighting kind of thing. So the opening scene will be in a Greek Colosseum, and there will be these people who, for entertainment, are fighting, like bullfighting, but instead of a bull, a skull crawler. And because skull crawlers are creatures from the Hollow Earth, and Godzilla is the king of the Hollow Earth, given that his subjects are being killed for entertainment, that kind of pisses him off a little bit. Yeah, it's not just about the Salem witch trials with Godzilla. Pretty much, if you piss him off, he's gonna come for you. And the ancient Greeks, they pissed him off. So Godzilla's gonna rise up. At first, there may even be a scene of him attacking a few boats, just to, you know, really make Godzilla scary, because this is still a horror universe. But he comes over, he attacks ancient Greece, and then aliens show up and offer help. And their ultimate weapon is Gigan, which pisses off Godzilla even more, considering Gigan's origin story. Gigan will be a Hollow Earth kaiju who was kidnapped from the Hollow Earth by aliens, tortured and turned into a cyborg, and now Godzilla has to fight one of his former subjects. So that's like a rough plot summary of Godzilla BC, but Gigan and Godzilla, and obviously that Skullcrawler are not the only monsters that are going to show up in that movie. I already mentioned maybe Rodan. Sorry about that. Like stretching out, whatever. I'm stuttering a little bit, but you know, it's a Dan video, not a fan film, so I'm not going to I'm not going to edit this down and things. I can't think of words, but okay. Rodan and Mothra, maybe, but just cameos. The main three monsters in this movie will be Godzilla, Gigan, and this next monster, which is Shimu. Yeah, you're damn right. Look, I know. Maybe, I did think, should I maybe save Shimu for BC2 or another movie? But I was like, nah, I'm putting him in the same movie as Gigan. I gotta do that. But anyway, so, Shimu for Godzilla BC. Why now? I mean, people are gonna be thinking, but Dan, the new Empire isn't even out yet. We haven't even seen Shimu in an official Godzilla movie. So? So what if you get it wrong? Okay, plot summary, Shimu might be an ally to Godzilla, maybe an enemy at first, but then probably an ally. Because, come on, Godzilla and Shimu versus Gigan, that'd be an amazing fight. But also, people are gonna go but what if he's not an ally in the movie? What if he never turns good? So, look at the original Godzilla trilogy that I did. Mechagodzilla started out as a bad guy, but then he became an ally. So, yeah. That's the whole thing. I have really no plot summaries involving Shimu for this movie, but yeah. Shimu is going to be in this movie. So what about Godzilla BC2, the sequel to this movie? Well, I don't have as much plot details as I do for Godzilla BC1, but maybe... Okay, I lied. I do have one plot detail involving Shimu, which might actually maybe spoil the ending. So, if you want to go into Godzilla BC completely blind, now's your chance. You might want to skip to the next couple movie announcements. But if you're fine... And remember, this isn't the final ending of the movie. It's not finalized. I haven't even started working on this, because I haven't gotten everything I need. But anyway, at the end of the movie, Shimu may cause another ice age and freeze over ancient Greece. So, yeah. So there may be a kind of ice theme to Godzilla BC 2. So, who's going to be the villain in this movie? Well, if Gigan was the villain for BC 1, I thought it was only fitting that Megalon be the villain for BC 2. So, yeah. I don't have any plot summaries for BC 2, by the way. I'm just announcing that there will be a whole ice theme, because after Shimu froze ancient Greece, and Megalon will be in the movie. So, there you go. Let's move on to Godzilla vs. King Kong. I think Danimation fans have been waiting for this movie for a while, considering, obviously, Godzilla and King Kong are both in the Danimation horror fanverse. Godzilla may have more movies. Godzilla has 3 movies, and Kong has 1. But, who cares? And actually, I think, maybe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of Danimation fans, according to the analytics, I think they may be voting for Kong, considering that the King Kong movie got about 600 views, and the 3 Godzilla movies got about 200 views each. So, Kong might actually be the more popular monster in the Danimation horror fanverse. But, I did a poll a while ago asking if I should have Ghidorah come back for this movie, or have another villain. Ghidorah won the poll, but I'm sorry. I wanted to have a different villain. I don't want to do Ghidorah 2 times in a row. Ghidorah will still come back. He's not dead. I'm just going to say that. Sorry, I'm really bad at talking. Some people may be confused in the Danimation community, considering that in Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, the Oxygen Destroyer detonated, spoilers by the way, and I never showed what happened to Godzilla, Ghidorah, or even if Mechagodzilla survived. I'm just going to say it, all 3 of them survived. Godzilla, Mechagodzilla, and King Ghidorah are all still alive, and they're all going to come back. Obviously, Godzilla's going to come back, but for Mecha, who, like I have said, Mecha is not a villain, considering in the lore that there was a witch who was a friend of Godzilla, and her dead body is inside Mechagodzilla powering the thing. Go watch the movies, I think it's better explained in that. But yeah, Mechagodzilla and Godzilla are kind of allies in this series. They were enemies at first, but then they're allies. Long story. So let's get into Godzilla vs. King Kong. So Ghidorah's not going to be in the movie. Maybe in like a cameo, but he's not going to be the main villain of the movie, and he's not going to be the main conflict between Godzilla and King Kong. Because this villain is actually going to be the cause of the fight between Godzilla and King Kong. So, who's the villain going to be? I think by now you know who it is. Yeah, it's going to be Scar King. Another Godzilla x Kong the New Empire villain. Another villain that we haven't even seen yet, but yeah, I want to put Scar King in this movie. Obviously, Ghidorah beat Scar King in the poll. But I'm sorry to everyone who voted for Ghidorah. I'm really sorry, but I just really want to put Scar King in this movie. And like I said, the movie could work either way, but I feel like the movie works better with Scar King as the villain. And I feel like it makes more sense considering previously established Danimation horror fanverse lore. I think it makes a lot more sense, and Scar King is probably going to be really important to Danimation horror fanverse lore. And actually, a lot of Godzilla movies are important to the lore, because it introduces kaiju, introduces the Hollow Earth and everything, so yeah. So, Scar King is going to be in Godzilla vs. King Kong, so let's actually get into the plot, because I do have a rough plot summary of why Scar King's in the movie, why Godzilla and Kong are fighting. So, basically, after the incident in Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, where Ghidorah released a worldwide storm, which, I'm just gonna say, it opened up the Hollow Earth, and a lot of monsters were coming through. Scar King was one of them. And Scar King and Godzilla have a bit of a rivalry. Considering before Ghidorah came to Earth, Scar King was Godzilla's greatest enemy, which is sort of why Godzilla kinda hates the Kong species. And obviously, because Kong is young, he has no idea about any of this, so when Godzilla senses that Scar King is on the surface, Godzilla goes straight to Skull Island to kick his ass. And considering Kong is kind of the protector of Skull Island, he kind of interprets this as Godzilla attacking Skull Island when really, he just wants to fight Scar King. And, a bunch of stuff happens, Godzilla and King Kong get into a fight, and also, finally going to introduce Monarch in this movie. Monarch is canon to the Danimation horror fanverse. After 2 presidents die to kaiju, the current president now decided it's time to open an organization to study and keep the population safe from kaiju. And where is Monarch HQ going to be? Well, the closest place to kaiju life, Skull Island. So that's going to be kind of the rough plot summary for Godzilla vs. King Kong. Hope you like that. Hope that makes you excited for the movie. And also, hope that makes you a little more accepting that Scar King is going to be in the movie and Ghidorah is not going to be the main villain. Ghidorah is still involved in the story. Like, remember, it was Ghidorah's storm that awoke Scar King, but yeah, Scar King's this movie's main villain. Sorry. And then there's going to be a second Godzilla trilogy. Yeah, I consider kind of the first Godzilla trilogy to be Godzilla, Horror of Mechagodzilla, and then Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. And then Godzilla BC 1 and 2 are kind of spin-offs, and so is Godzilla vs. King Kong, but they're still canon to the Danimation horror fanverse. But the next trilogy is going to be completely Godzilla solo movies, and I'm not going to go into plot details for these 3 movies. I'm only going to reveal the time period and the villains. So, obviously, this trilogy is gonna take place after Godzilla vs. King Kong, and after the first trilogy. So it goes Godzilla BC 1 and 2, a lot of Danimation horror fanverse movies, then the first Godzilla trilogy, and the first King Kong, then Godzilla vs. King Kong, and then this trilogy. And as you can see here, we're focusing more on unnatural kaiju, like man-made kaiju. So, for the first movie, we've got Biollante, the next movie, we're going to get Hedorah, and then for the final movie of this trilogy, we're going to get Destroyer. And this may be the second trilogy, it won't be the last trilogy, because there may be a few others, like, we may introduce Zilla, we may introduce Shin Godzilla, maybe a few other villains, like maybe Megaguirus. Like, there's a lot of kaiju in the Godzilla universe that I could still bring into the Danimation horror fanverse. Like, we could bring in Space Godzilla, and just a lot more kaiju. Maybe even Ebera, or, like, a couple of Showa characters. But, aside from that, this is the villains for the next trilogy. I'm really excited to bring these 3 villains into the fanverse as well. So, yeah, hope you're excited. Now, we've got one new kind of Toho-related kaiju, and we've got 3 other kaiju movies, but they're not Godzilla movies, so we can stop with the Godzilla thing. I know this video's kind of been a bit Godzilla-centric so far. So let's talk about Left Forgotten Season 2. Yeah, Left Forgotten Season 2. Now, Left Forgotten is a really personal project to me, considering I started it about, 2-3 years ago. 3 years ago, Season 1 was written, and Season 1 took so many delays. But now, I can finally say something Left Forgotten related is probably going to be the first thing in this video to come out. Yes, Season 2 is going to probably come out first. All this stuff's going to come out in the new year, so 2024 is when you can expect all of this. Maybe some of it in 2025, but all the Godzilla stuff and Left Forgotten Season 2, you can expect for 2024. Hell, even the first Venom, you could probably expect for 2024, or maybe even Venom 2 for 2024 you can expect. So, you can expect all this stuff for 2024, so let's talk about Left Forgotten Season 2. So, it's going to be like the first season, 13 episodes. Instead, we're going to have the Funtime animatronics, so we're going to be doing a kind of sister location story, meaning Michael Afton's going to become a bigger character than he was in Season 1. William Afton, Alice Angel, and the Ink Demon are all still out there. They're all still pretty big villains. A couple of characters who you thought were dead might come back. I'll give you a hint. He's come back before. He came back in Season 1, and he's going to come back in Season 2. So, yeah. I'm really excited for Season 2, and, yeah, in the new year, I hope you're excited for Season 2, because it's going to be big. And I'm not going to give it its own segment, but, because it's still something I've been throwing around, but the Among Us miniseries might also get a Season 2. But I'm going to be focusing on Left Forgotten Season 2 for TV shows at the moment. So, yeah, hope you're excited for that. I was throwing around whether to introduce her in a Godzilla movie, but I thought, nah, let's give her own movie. Mothra. So, yeah, Mothra's gonna get her own movie, and before someone says, oh, it's just a spin-off or something, nah, Mothra is gonna be pretty important, and I'm actually gonna say it, Mothra takes place before the Godzilla movies do. If you've seen the Danimation horror fanverse Godzilla films, you'll know that they take place after World War II. Mothra is going to take place either in World War I or World War II. Maybe even World War I will be when Mothra happens. But yeah, Mothra is going to get her own movie. Not too sure about plot details at the moment. If you heard that, excuse me, I had like a burp in my throat or like a voice crack or something. But yeah, Mothra's going to have her own movie. And yeah, she's going to have a villain in her movie. You probably already know who it's going to be for a Mothra movie. Yep, Batra. Batra's going to be the main villain of this Mothra movie. And yeah, it is going to take place mainly on Infant Island. Maybe some things on the surface. I mean, this is going to be taking place either in World War I or World War II. And it will be sort of like a dark, depressing war movie mixed in with the kaiju stuff. And Mothra and Batra are going to represent something. Represents forces of life and death, good and evil, happiness and depression. Mothra and Batra represent those two things. And given that World War One or maybe World War Two, I'm leaning more towards maybe World War One, maybe even during the Great Depression and things, to have Batra and Mothra to put this movie, because that would be a great time for Batra to show up, considering he represents the dark side of the world. Mothra and Batra kind of keep the balance of light and dark in the Danimation horror fanverse. They're still kaiju, but they're still some of the most important kaiju. Like, remember, in Godzilla lore, Mothra is immortal. I don't know about Batra, but considering Batra's the same species as Mothra, I would say Batra is also immortal. So yeah, the fight between Mothra and Batra is never-ending, it represents something, and given the time period, I figured that World War One, maybe World War Two if I change my mind. If you heard that, I'm sorry, I just knocked my hand on something. But, I'm not going to record this again. So yeah, Mothra's getting her own movie, Batra's going to be the villain, and it's going to be a prequel to Godzilla. So, hope you like the sound of that. Now, let's talk about less kaiju movies. There's still 2 more kaiju movies for me to talk about in this video, but I'm going to go off them for a little bit, just to talk about a couple of others. So let's get into it. Okay, I've been promising this movie since 2022. I'm sorry, okay? I'm really working on it. I really want to get Silent Hill into the universe. And it will be in the Danimation horror fanverse, I promise. Pyramid Head will still be the main villain. It will still be about James Sunderland. But I will have one more plot detail. It's going to finally resolve the whole thing with Cthulhu. Yeah, Cthulhu is going to be in this. Not a lot to say, but that's because I've already talked about Silent Hill in 2 of these videos, so I'm sorry, I know I've been promising it for a while. Just hold out hope. Silent Hill will come out. God, this thing seemed more delays than Left Forgotten did. And you can't bring in Silent Hill without bringing in Resident Evil. Yeah, I know, I've been thinking about this one for a while too. I haven't talked about it, but I am going to talk about it now. Resident Evil will be a trilogy. And it will finally take place in the Terminator timeline, meaning this is going to be like after Terminator, after the whole zombie apocalypse thing is done. But we're going to have rebooted zombies, like newer, actually pretty much the same zombies, just in a different timeline. And we're going to have 2 main villains here. For the whole trilogy, obviously Wesker's going to be the main villain, but for the first movie, I really want to have Nemesis be in the first movie. And then for, Resident Evil 2, we'll go to places that were like Resident Evil 4, maybe even have the Executioner from Resident Evil 5, and then Resident Evil 3, I was thinking maybe even bringing some stuff from Resident Evil 7 or 8, like Lady Dimitrescu, who, pretty sure that's how you say her name. You'd think I'd know, considering the internet went crazy for her. But anyway, yeah. That's going to be the Resident Evil trilogy, so the first movie will be based on the first 3 games, the second movie will be based on 4 and 5, forget 6 completely, and then the final movie will be based on 7 and 8, mainly with Lady Dimitrescu and, skip Jack Baker and all that. Mainly because I know more about 8 than I do 7. That's completely my own fault, I'm sorry, but yeah, hope you're excited for the Resident Evil trilogy. And obviously, Wesker's going to be in all of these movies as the overall main villain. So yeah, hope you're excited for these 3 Resident Evil movies. Now, let's get back to the last 2 kaiju movies, and these 2 are pretty interesting. So, we can get the kaiju movies done, then we can keep going, and then we can end the video. Alright. Let's talk Gamera. Yep, Gamera. Because I thought if you're bringing Godzilla, you're bringing King Kong, you've got to bring in Gamera. Monsterverse, take notes. Bring Gamera into the Monsterverse. But, apart from that, let's talk about the Danimation version of Gamera. What's that going to be? And why is Gamera going to be special? Well, to me, Gamera is going to be the only kaiju that's strictly a hero. Godzilla, I think, pretty much, if you leave him alone, he'll leave you alone, and if you don't mess up, he'll leave you alone. Kong, I feel like he's mostly act the same way. You hurt something he cares about, he's gonna attack you. Aside from that, he'll leave you alone. And like I said, Godzilla's the same way. You hurt something Godzilla cares about, it's your ass. But Gamera is actually strictly a guardian of the universe. So I think only Gamera and Mothra are the only 2 strictly good kaiju. Godzilla and Kong aren't evil, they're just not strictly on the side of good or evil. Gamera and Mothra are the only kaiju that are good. So let's talk plot details for Gamera. Obviously, Gaios is going to be the main villain, and it's going to take a lot of inspiration from the Heisei Gamera, so the Atlantean origin for Gamera. And also, the thing that's going to be special about Gamera is the time period. A lot of the Danimation kaiju movies take place in the 30s and 40s. So far, every kaiju movie, except Cloverfield, has taken place in the 40s. Gamera is not going to take place in the 40s, it's going to take place in the 2000s. Actually, I think even the year 2000 is when Gamera is going to take place. So yeah, that's basically all I've got for the Danimation version of Gamera. Hope you're excited, because I'm actually really excited for this one. So, yeah. Right, let's talk King Kong. So for this one, we've got The Birth of Kong. It's not actually going to show the birth of Kong, it's, just the name of, the MonsterVerse comic, which we're going to be, taking the name from, but doing a completely different origin to do, the origin for the Danimation version of King Kong. That took a while. Let's just get into it. Birth of Kong. So what's it going to be like? Well, first off, we're finally going to get to see what the Hollow Earth looked like during the Great Kaiju War, which I haven't really explained all that well. You know what it is, because the MonsterVerse has explained it, but I haven't really explained that it happened in the fanverse. It did, but it was for different reasons. So, the beginning, we see Kong's parents, basically help Kong actually escape the Hollow Earth, go up to the surface, and when he goes up to the surface, it's during prehistoric times. So, even before Godzilla BC, and, not before Cthulhu, considering if you look on the fanverse in timeline order, Cthulhu is first in that playlist for weird reasons, because, time travel and everything. But apart from that, this movie is the first movie in the timeline, so this will show King Kong in dinosaur times. He'll start off 10 feet and things, so 10 foot, 20 foot. So finally, we're going to get to see King Kong fight a T-Rex and fight some dinosaurs, maybe even the ancestors of the dinosaurs that show up in the Jurassic Park movies that I've made, or the Jurassic Park movie. Might even get to see Kong fight a Spinosaurus, but eventually we're going to see Kong grow up to the size we see him in the other movies. Which, if you don't know, Kong is about 150 to 160 feet in the main movies. Baby Kong is about 20 feet. Adult Kong is about 160 to 150 feet. And in case you're wondering, Godzilla is actually pretty small, well, actually considering other Godzillas. Our version, the Danimation fanverse version of Godzilla, is 154 feet tall. Still big, just not as big as he is in the MonsterVerse, because that's 300 feet. But I thought that if we make the kaiju smaller, like we make Godzilla and Kong in the 100-foot category, they can interact with humans a lot more and be a lot scarier. So yeah, so Kong, he'll start off in the dinosaur time. The whole movie will be in dinosaur times, except for the prologue in the Hollow Earth, which will actually feature Scar King and the Godzilla species, by the way. But the movie is mainly about Kong, and Kong will grow up. He'll become king of the Cretaceous period, except for one other species. I've made a rule for Danimation kaiju movies that every movie will introduce a new kaiju. That's why Scar King's going to be in Godzilla vs. King Kong, and this movie's new kaiju is going to be Gorosaurus. Yep, a classic Toho kaiju. He was going to be saved for the Godzilla movies and be an ally to Godzilla, but I think for that I could just do a member of Gorosaurus' species, but the main Gorosaurus is going to be the main villain of Birth of Kong, and the whole thing is going to be Gorosaurus is going to be one of the first kaijus on the surface, and so is Kong. But Gorosaurus will be a little older, he's already reached full size, so he's already 150 feet, and baby Kong is only 20 feet. So we'll have to watch Kong grow up, and basically, Gorosaurus will be the king of the dinosaurs. You think that'll be Spinosaurus or T-Rex? No, it's actually Gorosaurus. But pretty much, the Birth of Kong, it's gonna be a kind of prehistoric horror where we get to see Kong and have his journey go from Kong, defeat Gorosaurus, and finally earn the name King Kong. So, that's basically the plot summary for Birth of Kong. I'm actually pretty excited for this one. So let's get into the next few films. So that's all the kaiju movies done, at least for now. This video's over a half an hour long, but we've still got a couple more films to talk about. Okay, let's talk Spawn. Now, I have talked about it before, but what's changed is that the first episode of Spawn has actually been written. So a lot of stuff has changed. So Spawn is going to be a lot more than a miniseries now. It's going to be like Left Forgotten. It's going to have multiple seasons, 13 episodes and everything. And the first episode of Spawn has been written. But all I'm going to say now is the time period. It's going to take place in between Left Forgotten Season 3 and Season 4. So Season 3 of Left Forgotten takes place in 2007. Season 1 took place in 2005. Season 2 will be in 2006. Season 3, 2007. And I don't know the exact year. Someone else will have to do the maths. But Season 4 of Left Forgotten takes place 23 years later. There's going to be a bit of a time gap just because of one character has to grow up. And in between that is Spawn. So there's your timeline detail. I've got no plot details because you have to wait for the show for that. Anyway, let's talk about Ghost Rider. Yeah, another Marvel character, but it's another dark horror Marvel character, so Venom and Ghost Rider, they can fit, and they're going to be the only Marvel characters who are in the Danimation horror fanverse. No Spider-Man, no Iron Man, no Hulk, just Venom and Ghost Rider. Obviously characters that are connected to those characters, like Venom's villains, there's going to be, Carnage and everything, Null, Matt Gargan, who's not going to become Scorpion, but he's just going to be, a cameo. Well, not a cameo, he's still going to be human in the Venom movies. But let's talk about Ghost Rider. Haven't quite figured out the time period, but I do know where it's set. It's going to be set in Death Valley, which is obviously where Ghost Rider haunts. It's going to be kind of an origin movie. It's going to have flashbacks and things, but pretty much Johnny Blaze is already the Ghost Rider, but he's going to try and, piece together why he's the Ghost Rider. There's going to be, flashbacks and things going on compared to what's actually going on in the movie, which, to be honest with you, I haven't figured out yet. Ghost Rider's, really early in development, but there is going to be a Ghost Rider movie in the Danimation horror fanverse. That I can promise you. Right, we've got two more things. One is another original movie, and the other is going to be two new sequels for a new trilogy for a movie that's already come out. Bit confusing, I know, but you'll know what I mean soon. Right, this one I don't have many plot details for, but yeah. The Boys. Yeah? Now, some people did say when I put on the poll, no way, it wouldn't fit, but the majority of people who, when I said, would The Boys work in the Danimation horror fanverse, said yes. And they said the same to Ghost Rider and Venom and everything. The only time I'm ever going to ignore a poll is the thing with Ghidorah and Scar King, because remember the rule, new movie, new kaiju. That's the rule, okay? Every movie needs to have at least one new character. So, for The Boys, it's going to follow mainly the rivalry between Homelander and Billy Butcher, and for the time period, it's going to be set after all the Danimation horror fanverse movies, in, the Terminator timeline and everything, so after Terminator, after Resident Evil and all that, because Resident Evil's in the Terminator timeline as well. So, pretty much they invent Compound V, they create superpowers, and obviously they give them to corrupt people, like Homelander and everything. But pretty much the whole idea is to try and market superheroes as a way to combat the whole monster problem, because in the Danimation horror fanverse, if you look at the lore, monsters have been around for longer than people have, and yet people don't know that, and they don't care, so they just want to kill a bunch of monsters, so they create superheroes, they go a bit mad with power, and you have the Boys, and then we have Homelander, who basically thinks he can do whatever he wants, and because he's a massive man-child, he kills the Seven, he kills his team, and just becomes a solo hero, and blames it on an accident. So, pretty much, he lies, kills his team, Billy Butcher knows the whole truth, so it's going to be mainly a movie about Billy Butcher and Homelander's rivalry. Okay, let's get into the last thing before I can end this video, and because it's half an hour long, over half an hour, it's going to be a freaking nightmare to upload. Anyway, let's get into it. Now, you all seem to really enjoy the Jurassic Park movie I did, and obviously I've teased the Indominus Rex in that movie and in Alien 2, So you know that there's gonna be a Jurassic Park sequel, but what you probably didn't know is I'm making a trilogy, and the villain of the third movie will be the Scorpius Rex. So, yeah, I'll have some plot details. Movie 2 will have Indominus Rex, not really as a villain. The main villain will actually be Giganotosaurus, but if you want to know the whole motivation behind Indominus Rex, then go watch the first Jurassic Park. Now, for Scorpius Rex, if you've never watched the Danimation version of Jurassic Park, you might want to go and watch it just so that the Scorpius Rex's origin makes sense to you. It's not a prototype for the Indominus like it is in the main Jurassic Park canon. Instead, it's a completely new species that Dinosaur Island created itself. So it's an evolved new species, and pretty much the whole plot is that it's using its poison to kill off all the dinosaurs, but before they die, they become even more aggressive until there's only one dinosaur surviving, which ends up being the T-Rex. And then, basically, the T-Rex is taken back to Dinosaur Island, because the Scorpius and the T-Rex end up having a fight, like, on the mainland, with, like, in, like, a town or in the city and things. And then, basically, Scorpius loses, T-Rex is the last dinosaur left alive, but the island evolves around the T-Rex, creates new species, and restores Dinosaur Island. So that's actually going to be the plot of the third Jurassic Park movie. Now, for the second Jurassic Park movie, we're going to bring in a couple of characters from Jurassic World. Obviously, Indominus Rex is going to be the apex of the island, and it's going to be about a rivalry between the T-Rex and the Giganotosaurus, which also was brought back from the island, and just Indominus trying to keep the peace. But I'm just going to say it, the Indominus is going to die at the end, which ends up the island creating a new species, the Scorpius Rex, which ends up being the villain of the third movie. Right, so that's the rough plot details of the Jurassic Park trilogy. Alright, thank God that's all done. Right, thank God that's over. I'm joking, obviously. But still, this video, it's probably going to be about 40 minutes, so hope you're prepared for that. Anyway, I've been Danimation. Thanks for watching. I love you guys so much. You guys are amazing fans. Hope you're excited for these next Danimation movies. Actually, put in the comments which one you're most excited for. And also, while you're down there, if you could like and subscribe, that would be amazing. I know it's really cringy me saying that. It's actually the first time I've ever said it. And saying it makes me never want to do it again, because it just makes me sound cringy and stereotypical. But you know what? Yeah, if you could, like, comment, like, and subscribe and everything, that'd be great. That'd really help out the channel. And then you'd know when these films are coming out, and, like, when Left Forgotten and Spawn episodes are coming out. So, yeah. I've been Danimation. I'll see you all in 2024. This will probably be the last video of 2024. So, see ya. For the final time this year, Danimation out.